Oh, there's people there. That's the sound.
I told people to check in.
Okay.
Well, they might want to check in.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Okay.
To check in. There's sort of all over the place.
So right now we are recording. If we click on exit full screen.
Okay.
Right. So when you will want to go to PowerPoint, just share screen. And if you want to start video, so if you want the camera to start, click on start video.
So should I start the video first and then share the screen?
Yes, that would make most sense. You want to start with video first and then with the screen.
Okay.
So yes.
Perfect.
And then
Thank you.
no problem.
So they can't see anything yet.
No.
She's from Mexico. Where are you from?
I'm from Uzbekistan.
Oh, wow.
South of Russia. The accent is Russian.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
What's your instrument?
I played classical violin for about 20 years, but here I'm studying jazz guitar and jazz bass.
Okay.
And composition, I guess.
In contemporary improv?
Jazz program,
Jazz.
continuing education.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. So for about 4 years, I haven't really played violin, but now I'm picking it back up.
Okay.
It's pretty fun.
Oh, good.
Hopefully we can see participants here. It's awesome.
It's funny to watch them because they can't see us, right?
No. This is one-sided right now. Only we can see them. So you were asking about people asking questions. Just as a test, could anybody try the chat feature and ask a question?
Right now?
Yes.
How do I do that?
I'm asking the listeners right now.
Oh, they can listen.
I believe so. Can you hear us?
David, can you hear us? We can hear you.
We can't hear them unless you want to.
Why did they all have sunglasses?
So if you could please click on the chat to ask a question, just say hi or something, just so we could see whether that works or not.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great.
Oh, you can hear us. Oh, we were talking about you. Sorry.
There is a call waiting for the meeting.
Okay, so the chat will also be open here. If people don't want to speak over the microphone,
Okay.
they will be able to type the message in there.
But there's a way I can turn off so they can't see.
I believe so. So you can, oh yeah. Right. So
Okay.
you could click mute, I believe, right? Yes. So if you hover over any of the participants, you could just click that.
Okay.
And the chat will be open over there.
Sorry. If you can hang out. that'll be
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Look at the total again.
I'll just be there at the piano.
That's fine. It's a good presentation.
It-
How come he's on? Oh, I see. We have guests.
Excellent. Hello.
They can hear us, but we can't hear them unless we want to.
If you don't want sound right now, you could also mute yourself in the mute.
Hi.
Hey, could somebody try asking a question, typing it in? there's a group chat. No?
Yes.
Can you see this? So. Cool. Good, it works.
It works. Is the moon made of cheese?
These
As
are
far
the
as I
questions.
know. Frozen yogurt.
Then they can also hear us talk. So if you don't feel like typing it, then you can just say hi. It's convenient.
That's probably.
Resume recording.
But we need us.
Okay.
Where's us?
I don't know. So we like the news team.
Last night I watched the news and every headline was alliteration. So we need to use some alliteration.
Alliteration.
Yes.
So, okay. Let's see. Video has started. Let's. Yes, it's recording.
Recording.
Okay.
All right. So you can see us? You can see. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Vanessa Mulvey. For those of you that don't know me, I'm co-president of Andover Educators, and I'm thrilled to be with you tonight with my colleague, Eli Epstein, from the New England Conservatory of Music. We're going to be diving into his presentation tonight that he shared earlier this year at a PAMA meeting that I helped organize. So I want to do a couple of thank yous here for New England Conservatory who helped make this all possible. The first person I want to thank is Rachel Roberts, who is the Director of Entrepreneurial Musicianship here at NEC. She is my chairperson and Eli's as well. We want to thank Dan Schmunk, who is the Director of the School of Continuing Studies. Julianne Couture, who is Projects and Operations Manager of the School of Continuing Studies. And our assistant tonight is Greg. And of course, I want to thank Eli. Eli is a busy faculty member here. He is a veteran second horn player of the Cleveland Orchestra. And he also has a wonderful book that I wanted to share called Horn Playing from the Inside Out. This is a fantastic book that I have learned several amazing things out of, and there's more to learn, I know. You can check out more about Eli on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel and also at his website, eliepstein.com. So tonight, Eli will be sharing the MRI films and research of Dr. Peter Iltis, professor of horn and kinesiology at Gordon College. I'm going to let him guide us through this fascinating process and the findings that came out of this study. So without further ado, welcome Eli.
Thanks so much, Vanessa. It's really great to see all of you up there on the screen all over the world. It's sort of fun for me to do this. I've never done a webinar before, so it's a little nerve-wracking, all the technical stuff, but Gray is helping us figure all of that out. He's the man in the shadows over there. So I went on the Andover Educators website because the dictum is know thy audience, and I was very heartened by the website, and I was just looking for what your mission is, and I wrote down a few things: saving, securing, and enhancing musical careers by providing accurate information about the body and movement, clear, concise, and practical. And the goal is increasing ease while reducing and eliminating injury. And I thought to myself, wow, that's really what I'm all about. And this MRI study really points to a lot of body mapping that we really didn't know about before. And it's sort of right there in the films that I'll talk about later. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about me, about my background. David, it's nice to see you. I used to play in the Cleveland Orchestra, as Vanessa said. But before that, I grew up in, oops.
We're not on the right thing.
We're not on the
Right, I
right
was
thing.
trying to.
Sorry, everybody.
Yes. Stop share.
There we are.
There I am. Okay, this is what we look like.
Hi.
Anyway, so I grew up in Philadelphia and started playing the French horn when I was 8 years old. Kind of too early, I would say. But I got good at it pretty quickly, and I won these competitions when I was 11 and 12 and 14 and 16 to play with the Philadelphia Orchestra on educational concerts. I went to the Eastman School of Music after a one-year stint at the University of Pennsylvania and played with the Rochester Philharmonic during school, and then got the second horn job after I graduated. 7 years after that, I got into the Cleveland Orchestra at 27. And I started teaching at Cleveland Institute of Music when I was 29. During the time that I was in the Cleveland Orchestra, it was a recording boom because digital technology had just taken off in the early 1980s. And so the orchestra was like in the middle of this project to record the entire orchestral canon. And that meant that I never got a day off, or rarely got a day off. We would go for a whole month without a day off. They would call it day off with recording, which didn't feel like a day off at all. I should have a laugh track to this. So it was very, sometimes it was very heavy recording for horn. We recorded all of the Mahler symphonies and all the Bruckner symphonies and Wagner ring operas, 3 out of 4. And so it was an incredible opportunity for me to experiment with things and test things out. When you record, they take so many takes of every section of a symphony. And so I found myself repeating, for example, the trio of Mozart Symphony Number 40 like 20 times. And we have to do it again and again if people made mistakes or somebody dropped a pencil or there was a truck zooming by on Carnegie Avenue. And so it was like this high pressure situation where the demand was to be very accurate and also to sound beautiful all the time. And so I was trying to come up with a way to do that without going crazy. And I was recalling my first horn teacher wrote in my music. I remember playing Strauss horn concerto number 1. And for this octave jump in the exposition of the first movement, he wrote, ooh-ee. And so I started remembering, oh, these vowels that my old teacher had recommended doing. And I didn't really think of it much when I was 10 or 11. But when I was in my 20s, I got back to those vowels. And I was like, well, that does help. It does help to sort of imagine saying E as I go towards a high note. And so I started developing this system of vowels. Well, if E is for high notes, then what would be for low notes? Because I played second horn in the Cleveland Orchestra. And you had to have a really great low register, a good high register, and lots of flexibility in between. And so I experimented with different vowels, and in all of these takes and all these recordings, I sort of figured out, well, empirically, these work better than those. And, I miss less notes when I think about doing this with my playing. So I started experimenting on my students. They were sort of my guinea pigs at Cleveland Institute of Music. And I found that these vowels helped them too. And I didn't exactly know why, but I didn't exactly know what they looked like. But I was really heartened that what helped me with my own playing could help somebody else. So it's sort of, vowels have been around for a long time. There's even an old horn method by Oscar Franz that's copyrighted in 1900, where he says to slur from a lower note to a higher note, you go, I-E, I-E. I just read this like 2 weeks ago, this old reprint, or a new reprint of an old book. And I was like, wow, so for generations, people have known about the benefits of vowels, but never really knew why. And except that, vowels have sort of been on the periphery of horn pedagogy, brass pedagogy for a while, though I'm trying to do something about that. Generally, with brass pedagogy, the focus has been on the facial muscles and the aperture of the embouchure. The aperture is like the center of the embouchure that vibrates. And there's been a tremendous amount of teaching about what the embouchure should look like, and a lot of focus with vocabulary on terms like lip slur, or lip trill, or lip it up, lip it down. And it's so focused on the lips. So even unconsciously in the pedagogy, there's been all this emphasis on what do you do with your lips. And when those of us, well, I'm not an Alexander person, but those of you who are into body mapping know that lips don't even have muscles. It's like the muscular lips. But anyway, so I guess there's been so much focus on that that people have kind of lost sight that there might be other things that control airspeed. So let's see. There's been a lot of fine work done by Arnold Jacobs. Instead of focusing so much on the lips, he focused on the air, and he was really the first brass player that I know about who focused on, what does the physiology of breathing really look like? And, I still hear, just a few weeks ago, Jim Markey, the bass trombone player in the BSO, and I were doing something, something at NEC prep together with the brass students, and he brought up Arnold Jacobs and a great metaphor for, the wind and the song. It's like, okay, so Arnold Jacobs focused on wind, but it's like how we control the air other than with our facial muscles is the part that I've been really interested in. So I started collaborating with Peter Iltis that Vanessa mentioned. So Dr. Peter Iltis is a professor of horn and kinesiology at Gordon College, which is a college about an hour north of here in Wenham, Massachusetts. He developed 30 years ago, he found that he was really having a hard time playing the horn after starting a professional career in the area, being a freelancer. And he didn't understand what was going on with his playing, and nobody had talked about embouchure dystonia at that time. Nobody knew what he was experiencing. So Peter got a doctorate in kinesiology, which is the study of movement. And he has, in the last 5 or so years, really made it his life's work to understand dystonia better. What are the causes? Is it preventable? Is it curable? Those kinds of questions. So you probably know, you've probably heard about embouchure dystonia, but for those of you who haven't, it's a task-specific neurological disorder that where a person loses control over the muscles of the face and muscles of the tongue that are involved in playing an instrument. Those same muscles, these musicians seem to have control over to eat and to speak, but not to play the instrument that they've been working so hard at their whole lives. So now we're finding, 30 years later, that there are many, it's still a rare condition to have, but there are many sort of famous professional brass players in this country that have developed embouchure dystonia. People like Warren Deck, who used to be the tuba player in the New York Philharmonic, famous trumpet players, famous horn players, Eric Overholt of the LA Philharmonic, developed it and had to resign from that orchestra. So it tragically ends performing careers. So Peter was designing an experiment to see if there were significant differences in how dystonic horn players played as compared to the highest level professional horn players we could find. People who play not only technically beautifully, but artistically beautifully and with beautiful sounds and with sustained careers. So he was presenting a paper for this medical issues of musicians conference. And a guy came up to him, I think it was Eckhart Altenmuller, and he said, I think we could work together, and we have this capability at the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen in Germany that we can film MRI images up to 100 frames per second, which is kind of unheard of. It's still, people are surprised, radiology people are surprised when I mention that to them in this country. But they've figured out a way to do that and to make these images very clear. So for the first time, we can see things with pretty good clarity that are going on inside a horn player or brass player in real time. They're called real-time magnetic resonance imaging. So I jumped at the chance to help him design the experiment and to sort of advise him on things and to be one of the guinea pigs that go in the MRI machine. And I did that about 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago, because, it was sort of on my bucket list. It's like, I wanted to see exactly what I looked like inside my mouth and inside my pharynx when I was playing the horn, because for so many years in the Cleveland Orchestra, I'd been really thinking, well, this is what I'm doing. Wonder what it looks like. What does it really look like? And I found out what it really looks like, and we're going to see that pretty soon. So teachers generally teach what they can directly observe. And when facets of horn playing are hidden from you, then teachers generally rely on their best guesses, which is what I was relying on. So this capability at the Max Planck Institute really helped us go inside the bodies of some of the finest horn players in the world as they play. And, using this new window on a world previously hidden brings new compelling information on how this elite group of horn players actually plays the horn with ease and with health and the highest level of artistry. So let's go into the PowerPoint, and we're going to see some of these videos and explain what's going on.
Cancel this.
Yes. The computer share screen.
Oh, there it is. Here we go. This, right?
Yes. And then,
And then I gotta get rid of this.
There we are. Okay,
Okay.
good.
All right.
Okay, so at the top of the screen, you're seeing the MRI machine, and there's actually a person in it with a blanket over them, and there's the MRI compatible horn, which is a non-magnetic horn, just so that we didn't die while we were in the MRI chamber, because there's a tremendous magnetic field in that room. And in the part of the screen, at the bottom of the screen, that's me and Peter Iltis, who's the science man. So let's go to the next. We just want to recognize the contributors to this ongoing effort, to this experiment. Just click again. Yeah. And so here's a shot of the Berlin Philharmonic horn section, and maybe I can point people out with the mouse. So that's Stefan Durr, Sarah Willis, Stefan Jezierski, and then I'm a little bit murky about the names of the others, but let's find their names. There we go. So here are elite performers. We wanted to get these performers because they're kind of unimpeachable. It's like these players really are playing and have been playing beautifully for a very long time. And people the world over recognize them as fine horn players. So let's keep going. And then probably just as accomplished, we have the science team at the Max Planck Institute. There's an aerial view of Max Planck Institute in Göttingen, and the science team Jens Fromm, Eckhard Altenmüller, and Peter Iltis. Jens Fromm, I believe, won a very big science prize in Germany just recently for his work. He's really a brilliant man. So let's continue. What is nuclear magnetic resonance imaging? So soft tissue contains hydrogen atoms. You expose them to a very strong oscillating magnetic field. I guess you can read just as well as I. And this emits a radio frequency that is picked up by the receiving coils near the part of the body of interest. So part of the body of interest is the head in this experiment. So there's Sarah Willis wearing something that looks like something out of Star Wars, the Stormtroopers. And that's the thing that has all these receiving coils in it, so that we can get very clear pictures of the inside of her head. Different tissues have different properties that allow differentiation between them, and these properties allow contrasting images to be formed. So, we see soft tissue structures as white. Click again. Anything that appears light colored is soft tissue, so we can use the mouse. And so here's the tongue. It takes up an awful lot of room in the mouth. This is me, by the way. This is what I look like on the inside. And here are the discs between my vertebrae, nice and white. So it's the soft things that show up. And here is an example of a hard thing that's black. That's a tooth, that's an incisor, and that's my upper incisor. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so there's two views that we were using in this experiment so far. This is the sagittal view, this is a side view, and this is the really scary one that I don't want you to have nightmares about. This is the coronal view, or the front view. And if I can just,
Sorry, did I go? Sorry.
let's go back, that's okay. I'll get to him. Okay, right. Right, let's get to the coronal view. Getting there. Okay, so just to orient you, this is the tongue. This is sort of an opening, like the tongue air channel, what Peter and I called that. I don't want him. Sorry. Anyway, okay, it doesn't want me to go back. So I told you we needed a special horn. This is Rick Serafinov, who teaches at Indiana University, and he's also like a master artisan of Baroque and classical horns. So we called upon him to make this non-magnetic horn. You can see the part of the horn that looks like a hand horn from, could have been 200 years old. And then to that, he attached this graduated plastic tubing that was graduated so that it made it into a conical instrument. And there's a plastic mouthpiece that he's playing on. Also that it's all non-magnetic, so nobody gets hurt in the MRI chamber. So here we have a video of Sarah Willis. I'm sure many of you have heard of. She's the fourth horn player in the Berlin Philharmonic, and she gets a lot of play on YouTube. She has her own TV show called Sarah's Music on Deutsche Welle.
Today I volunteered for a musical guinea pig. I'm going to go into the MRI tube so that the scientists can see exactly what's going on when I play the horn. I'm not really looking forward to it all that much, but it's for a good cause, and I'm sure the pictures are going to come out fascinating. Is this I'm going to be in the MRI for about an hour, playing exercises which have been especially created for these tests.
Bye-bye. Ready? Yes, and let's start.
Pulsations with each page, and as you go higher and higher, this area becomes smaller and smaller. So you're actually forming a channel with your tongue, the sides of your tongue on the palate, and then you put your finger behind the eyes. And then you'll notice there's a big orifice there, and as you get higher. In the eyes, yeah, eye muscles actually.
No, the eye muscles are
You
not
have
okay.
part of the nose and below, yeah, the tongue. You never had any idea that happened today.
That's all from Sarah's Music for today. What a fascinating day it was, and I wonder what science is going to think up for us musicians next. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that entertaining video. So it all starts with air. I mean, every brass teacher, every wind instrument teacher talks about breathing in every lesson, I imagine. And so I asked Peter if we could get movies of Sarah Willis breathing, and here they are. So just before we start, here are her lungs resting. Here's her heart. This is the shiny liver underneath the heart. And what you can't see is the diaphragm, but the diaphragm, I think, is laying on top of the liver in this shape, kind of like that. And So this is the side view, and this is a top view. So I'll let you watch this for a while. So this top view is really interesting to me because you can really see how the ribs expand in front. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes. You say yes. So in this top view, you can see how the ribs expand in front and how they expand in the back. And you can also see how the ribs kind of deflate the lungs as she breathes out. Over here, you kind of see what the diaphragm is doing as she plays. I could just watch this all day. And I love showing it to my students. Okay, I hope that wasn't too loud for you guys. Okay, hope that wasn't too loud for you guys, but definitely worth seeing. It's just really remarkable to me how much the lungs expand when the diaphragm drops down into the less dome position and pushes all that viscera out of the way. So here's somebody you probably know or know about. This is Barbara Conable, who's a wonderful Alexander author. And she said in her book, The Movement and Structures of Breathing, the mouth is not a thing, but rather a space among things. The space is altered again and again by the structures that form it and fill it. And she was saying this about singing, because I think most of that book was for choruses and vocalists. But I think the same principle can be applied to brass playing. So here we have, this is Stefan Dürr, who's the principal horn of the Berlin Phil. This is Peter Iltis, my collaborator, and these are assorted scientists. How does the mouth alter its shape and form? First question. So here we have two sagittal views, the side view of someone playing a low note at pianissimo and someone playing a high note at pianissimo. It's a little different because it is pianissimo, but you'll get the general idea. You can see for the low note, the way he's starting it, he has a lot of cavitation. Let's do that one again. And then I'll talk about why the tongue goes up like that later when we talk about dynamics. So you can see that the tongue is raised and forward in the mouth for a high note. It's not really the best example, but it's a start. Okay, we've done this. So we're on to the next experiment. So we wanted to see how the tongue changed position as the horn players slurred an ascending harmonic series. So harmonic series, you can get all of these notes just with changing airspeed without using any vowels. Here we have 9 of the people in the elite group.
my fault.
Do not touch. So before we start, we've got 9 elite horn players, and they're not synchronized exactly, but I want you to notice the pattern of how people are moving their tongues to slur up the harmonic series on the natural E flat horn. It's good to pick out one person to look at. Yeah, let's look at that again. And maybe you can pick out another person. Choose another person to look at this time around. Okay. So I was really interested in seeing that. You know, I didn't know if everyone played the horn the way that I did. I thought, you know, all these very prodigious kind of people like Stefan Dorr and Fergus McWilliam and Sarah Willis, I just thought, well, maybe they came up with their own idiosyncratic ways of playing the horn. And there were like 10 different ways of playing the horn, but they could just do it because they were natural players. And what we found was that there were definitely these patterns that all of the players were doing. And, you know, everybody has different sized mouths and different sized tongues, looks different on the inside, just like people look different on the outside. But the general patterns were very similar. And what Peter did, what scientists love to do, is they love to quantify. They love putting numbers to what they're seeing. And Peter found a way to generate some numbers along different spokes, kind of these axes that he just sort of arbitrarily put inside the mouths of each person, same axis for every subject. And then there's a great computer program called MATLAB, which is a company based in Boston. They advertise on the NPR radio station here. But it really is a brilliant company, and they helped with quantifying distances in the mouth. And what we found was that this was sort of a common kind of finding for most of the axes, was that they had this similar pattern of the tongue moving up and forward in the mouth for each harmonic, and doing that in a progressive, incremental way, and also having like a little bump on each note as the tongue sort of hit the next harmonic. So that's the mean tone movement graph. Very exciting. I love a bar graph. And here's a line graph. Remember line graphs from 5th grade? So what this shows is that, back to me. Okay, what this shows is that for the first several notes on the harmonic series, so this is concert pitch. Oh, I wish it wouldn't be so sensitive.
I think if you tap more than once, it's like a click.
So this is just showing that for the low B flat and F, and I'm just doing this very lightly with the mouse. This is D in the staff, this is F. For those notes, the tongue isn't moving that much, and isn't changing the oral cavitation with the tongue. The jaw is doing that for those notes, which we'll see later. But for the rest of the notes going up the harmonic series up to the B flat at the top of the staff, we see this gradual reduction in oral cavitation. And so my theory has always been that, you get this airstream that's coming up from the lungs and through the windpipe and into the pharynx and over the tongue. And as you make the oral cavitation smaller and smaller and smaller, it's going to help you shoot that airstream faster and faster and faster in a very focused way through the aperture. And that's a big part of changing airspeed. So now, I really do want to change slides. Okay, so jaw movement. We have a little funny thing here. Oh, I hope that was entertaining. Sebastian there. Okay, so drop the jaw. When you take horn lessons, everyone says drop the jaw in the low register. Not everyone, actually. There are teachers who say you don't drop the jaw, but I'm here to say, yes, you do move the jaw, and science has proved it. So here we have Jeff Nelson, who played in the Canadian Brass for many years, a horn soloist, and teaches at Indiana University. And he's going to play this descending harmonic series. So watch his tongue, but also watch his jaw. Yeah, let's watch that again. So what I really want you to be focused on after he gets out of the high register is his jaw moving sort of down, 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 and then out. And here the jaw starts moving and really out. Okay. And what we found was that everyone in this elite group was moving the jaw the same way. So these are Jeff Nelson's teeth. It's not the real colors of his teeth, thank goodness, but this is his upper incisor. And the blue and the green tooth are actually the same lower incisor. And the position of the lower incisor in green is for an F at the top of the staff, if you're thinking horn and F. And the blue is where that incisor traveled to play the low B flat or the low concert E flat, the lowest note he played. And so measuring with pixels, he moved this tooth, the equivalent of 11.25 millimeters, down, and then the horizontal movement was about 3.75 millimeters. So what we found, oops, too sensitive. So what we found was that everyone in the elite subject group, while they weren't moving their tongues in the low register to change notes, they were moving the jaw. And so you can see, try not to, no, hard to operate. So you can see above where it says B flat 3, I think that's like E flat in the staff. And going down, it's like 0.7 millimeters, another, 1 point something millimeters to get to the next lower harmonic, another skip to the following harmonic, and then a big jump to the lowest E flat 2. So, we're only talking about a millimeter or two or half a millimeter in some cases to get from one note to another. But if you can visualize that oral space that Barbara Conable was talking about that keeps being altered, we have the cavitation getting large enough to slow the air down a little bit more to make the next harmonic lower come out, not only come out, but come out beautifully, come out. Some of the horn players in this elite group are some of the best low horn players in the world, like Sarah Willis and Fergus McWilliam. And and even like Stefan Dorr was doing this, even though he's a high horn player. So it really points to a lot of consistency and kind of a way of playing the horn that's very advantageous, and all of these people are doing. So what are the implications for horn pedagogy? And can this be taught? And my answer is an emphatic yes, absolutely it can be taught, and it's not really hard to teach. But I think it's important to have some strategies for teaching this, and that's what I'll be talking about in the next part of this webinar. So I talked to you about my first horn teacher who talked about ooh and e and using e to play higher notes. So what Peter and I did when I was in the MRI chamber, after I did all the horn playing part, I wanted to say vowels and to see what my mouth looked like just speaking vowels in the MRI chamber. And we did all sorts of vowels, the ones that I'd been using to play the horn. And then Peter was like, say this, say that. Let's see what they look like. And so we came up with these 4 vowels. And so that's me on the bottom row. That's me saying those vowels. Ha, 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 and he. And on the top row, that's Sarah Willis playing the notes that have those red arrows right next to them. The low B flat for ha, the F, this is horn in E flat. The next measure is the written G, which is an F, horn in E flat. The C, which is a written D. We noticed that he was a good vowel for that one. And then our good friend he really mimics what Sarah Willis is doing for the high F. So we kind of went to it in a different ways, like rather than saying, hey, try these vowels and see if they work, it was like, let's see which vowels fit what the elite group is doing. And we did the same thing. So this is a page from my book, and I'm a little afraid to use the mouse because I don't want to move to the next page. But see, here I'm saying the, and I'm actually playing here. You notice how much cavitation is above my tongue. You notice how the back of my tongue is very flat. Sorry. If you go to the second to the last, second to the bottom diagram, you see how the looks. Me playing notes in that range, if you see the range to the left-hand part of that page, and see what my tongue looks like in the MRI chamber, and the diagram that I made with my graphic designer. And we go up to the second to the top group of images, and you see me saying ha, and my tongue is higher. The anterior body of the tongue, which is sort of the middle of the tongue, is also high. It's not just about the front of the tongue. And then we look at the top 2 images, and you see just how high my tongue is for playing a high F, or an F, and what it feels like my tongue is doing to articulate that and to start that note. Now we want to go to this. So basically what I did was that diagram that you saw before with ha and he and he. Why don't you all say that as we're doing this? And I know you're from all different parts of the world, and you know vowels are really different in even different regions of the United States and Canada. People who speak English say vowels completely different, but if you can try to say them like I'm saying them, say ha, like I'm in awe of how cold it is in Boston. say ha, and then ha. And you might feel your tongue moving up a little bit in the anterior body of the tongue. Then say ha, ha. That's one of Keith Underwood's favorite vowels. He loves the word heather for taking in a breath. Say heather and take in a breath like the ha of heather. Makes you breathe, makes you feel like you have wintergreen mint in your mouth. And then let's say he, and feel how the anterior of the body of the tongue goes up quite high. So basically, I use with my students that diagram of vowels and ranges of vowels that I had on that page you saw before. And what I do is I ask that they sing one of those syllables on every single note that they play in their imagination and in tune in their mind. So if we took a famous horn solo, one of my favorite horn solos, the Nocturne from Midsummer Night's Dream by Mendelssohn, and put vowels to it, it's sort of like horn player's solfege. Instead of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, we would do, and I'm not sure if I'm singing this in the right key, but la, la, ta, ti, ta, ta, ti, ta, ta, ha, ta, ta, ti, ha, ta, ha. Got most of those right. So when I have my students do that in a lesson, what seems to happen is their sound just gets extremely focused and centered and beautiful. And it's so much easier for them to play because the vowels, imagining saying the vowels or singing the vowels, gets their oral cavitation in the right ballpark for all these different registers. So the next technique that I use for teaching this is called finger breathing. That's what Keith Underwood calls it. Probably some of you have heard of him. He's kind of a breathing guru and kind of an incredible flute player. And of course, as Vanessa can attest, flute playing takes probably as much or more air than brass playing. So Keith did a master class here at NEC a few years ago. And all the flute players in the BSO that I was friends with said, Eli, you have to go and see this guy. It's kind of amazing. And I think you'd really learn a lot, get a lot out of it. And so I went. And I started applying this thing called finger breathing. So one of the things he teaches is actually making like a whistling sound using your fingers. So you have the fat part of your forefinger, just like I have in that picture on the left of the screen. And you do this sort of haunted whistling sound by rushing air past your finger. And so we did this, or that's Peter Iltes actually, who's, I said, we have to get a video of somebody finger breathing inside the MRI machine. And so he practiced sort of this whistling because there wasn't any room in the MRI machine to put your finger up in front of your mouth. But so he did sort of a whistling thing on the Nocturne. And it's too bad that we don't have any audio for this because it's very noisy in an MRI machine. If you've ever had an MRI, there's a lot of pinging going on. It's virtually impossible to record a whistling sound inside the MRI machine. But if you can hear me and watch the video at the same time, I can sort of sing the Nocturne while he's playing it. He's taking a few different breaths, but let's see if we can do this. Da, 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 dee, da. da, dee, da, 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 da. I think that's it. Okay, so it's not great, but it gives you an idea. And what we did for my book was to make still images of him whistling these notes. And here's where I'm a little afraid to use the mouse. So, but I have to, because we can compare the whistling to Sarah Willis actually playing within a half step of each note, because Mendelssohn Nocturne is horn in E, and the MRI horn was horn in E flat. So let's see if I can gently move. Oh no! Ah, so sensitive. So let's see. No, oh, this is really a shame. I'm not sure how to do this.
What do you want to do?
Well, what I want you to do, let's do this without the mouse. It's a little harder, but if you can see this, these two pages really clearly, if you go to Sarah, the left-hand page, in the left column, second from the top, you can see her playing what looks like a G natural, but it's horn in E flat. So it's the second image down on the left-hand side. That's her playing an F. And if you look at the right-hand page, at the first image on the left-hand side, that's Peter whistling an F sharp. And I want you to notice just how similar the cavitation is between Peter whistling the F sharp and Sarah Willis playing an F natural. Okay? And then I want you to go to, let's see, Sarah, let's go to the image directly next to Sarah playing the G, the written G in the staff, to the image of her playing the written G above the staff. So it's the second image on the right-hand side of Sarah playing. And just look at her cavitation, her tongue position there, and then go to the last image at the bottom right corner of the right-hand page, and that's Peter whistling a high F sharp. So again, we're within a half step. And notice the similarity between Peter whistling that F sharp and Sarah Willis playing the F natural on the horn. And it's like images like these that make me think that finger breathing is the real deal. That even if you're a good whistler, you can be a great brass player. If you can't whistle, you can sort of rush air against your finger, and it sounds like this. And so forth. So it sounds kind of like haunted Mendelssohn Nocturne. Let's see. Okay. So we're sort of nearing the end of this presentation, and we'll have time for questions. But before we go to that, I wanted to show you a few other things that we found out in the MRI chamber. By the way, I'm going back in a few weeks for round 2. We're trying to get all the elite players back to do more protocols. So if any of you, including you, Vanessa, if any of you have experiments that you want to do, you think it's worth looking at in a second round of this, you can type them in or email me or email Vanessa and see what we can do. So lip trills, I was saying at the beginning of this talk that the vocabulary really has a lot of this lip-oriented terms like lip slur, lip trill, lip it up, lip it down. And lip trills, are they really lip trills? And, horn players are just kind of really hung up over lip trills. But I think they should all see these videos because it really does clear things up. So you probably see this person's tongue going up and down. And what would that do to the oral cavitation? Well, it would make it from a larger cavitation to a smaller cavitation. I think that's what lip trills really are. Mostly is the lip is, or the tongue is really helping out. And this is me. And we can see a lot of clarity because I think that was filmed at 100 frames per second. We have some more lip drills going on. That's me again. Yeah. So part of the protocol was to tell people to trill as fast as they possibly could. And I think that was definitely one that was filmed at 100 frames per second. And you can see this sort of up and down motion of the tongue that's extremely fast. Another thing we looked at were dynamics, because there are a lot of myths about that and questions about that. And, I could always, not always, but I learned how to play extremely softly because when I was in the Cleveland Orchestra, Christoph von Dochnani, who was the music director, sometimes wanted the horns to be almost inaudible. And it's like, okay, if you're forced to do something, you kind of learn how to do it somehow physiologically. But I never knew what I was doing. And so these are very interesting videos that are showing 3 planes at the same time. So I'm afraid to use the mouse, but on the left, we have the sagittal view, the side view of, the mouth and the tongue. The center is actually a view of the glottis inside the pharynx and the vocal folds of the glottis. And the right-hand view is the coronal view, which is a front-facing view. And it'll be really interesting for you to see this, I think. So here's somebody playing really softly. You notice the tongue is pretty high up. See it again. And in the right hand image, the whole sort of that dorsal tongue air channel is quite small. And then on the bottom, we see the same person playing fortissimo, same note. No. Still the tongue. Okay. You notice there's a whole lot of cavitation above the tongue. Let's see if we can see both of them at the same time. It's almost like the tongue is acting as a baffle to reduce the intensity of the airstream coming through the mouth. You play softly. Let's see the glottis. And, just a word of caution that, you probably shouldn't tell your students to close their glottis or anything to play pianissimo, but just to know that, it's sort of part of the body mapping. You can see that the glottis is pretty wide compared to up here. Yeah, it has a different quality. And here we've got the tongue air channel. And this is very dramatic. So you see there's much larger opening, so all that blowing pressure is sort of compensating and taking up. You can blow really hard to play loud if the tongue does that, is what I'm taking away from that. Okay, so we're almost at the end. This is a similar thing. And this is mezzo forte. So you see things opening up. This is sort of fun staccato playing. How do you play staccato? Well, I never knew I could do it because conductors made me do it, and I found a way to do it physiologically, but I didn't know how I was doing it. But what we found was that it's actually the glottis that helps us stop the air strain momentarily to make a very short note. So here's a trumpet player, and this is pretty cool to look at. So you can see his glottis closing and making the air stop right away. It's kind of easy to teach your students. You just kind of tell them to sing exactly what they want to sound like. And like if you all said the everybody do that. I'll just assume you're doing it. The you can sort of control your glottis that way. And if you just imagine playing really short, your glottis will probably help you play short. Healthy way. This is a neat graphic about the glottis closing and all those little blue, they kind of look like the Finger Lakes of New York State. Those are places where the air is actually coming out through the glottis. So the MRI study continues to grow. And like I said, if you have ideas about things we should look at the end of April, please let Vanessa know or me know, and we'll see if we can include some of those questions. Where from here, there's something called the MRI Collaborative Horn Repository Project, where what we'd really like to do is get very high-level horn players from all over the world to come to Göttingen and get in the MRI chamber and go through these protocols so that we can have a large repository, sort of a vault of these MRI films that scientists and musicians and teachers, pedagogues, researchers can look at for, in the future, because we have access to these MRI capability and the scientists probably for another 3.5 years for free, and after that there's a question mark about whether we'll be able to do this kind of work. The Max Planck Institute and Jens Fromm and Eckhard Altemüller have made this technology available to us for free, which is crazy when you think about how much it costs to get an MRI taken when you look at a medical bill or something. They've really helped us out. So we want to get as much data as we possibly can. So here's the happy group of scientists and horn players. They're saying thank you for being interested in our MRI project. So I think that's mostly my talk. I guess the last point I wanted to make before we get to questions is that every single person in this elite group, like Sarah Willis, I think you might have noticed, that when she was looking at the computer monitor that you can see to the right side of the screen, at her own MRI images, she was kind of looking with disbelief, and Peter asked her, did you know you were doing any of that? And she said no. And Stefan Dorr was the same way. He was even more demonstrative. He said, I had no idea I was doing that. Everybody in the study had no idea they were doing it. And I guess the point I'd like to make is that when a very high level artist doesn't know how they do what they do, doesn't know the body mapping, then how can they teach that to their student? They might imagine or assume or kind of guess that about what they're doing inside their mouths to play with lots of ease and convey that to their student, but it might not be correct information. So what we have here is real science, is very factual. And it's like, it's really important that people look at this material and they see the logic of it, and they see that every one of the 12 people in the elite group was pretty much doing the same movement patterns. And I think it's a strong case to make that we're seeing really what the best horn players in the world do to play their instrument, what movements they make with their tongue and with their jaw and other things. And this is teachable, and it should be disseminated, it should be taught the world over. So with that, maybe we'll go to some questions.
Okay. So I stop the share.
Yes.
There we are. And there we are. There are the questions. All right. Let's see. David Neesmith asking, do MRIs exist yet of brass players with embouchure dystonia?
Oh yeah, David, that's a great question. So I think I said that originally this study was about comparing what the elite players were doing to professional horn players who had developed embouchure dystonia and were really, their careers have been compromised. So we do have images of those. I don't have those on this PowerPoint, but what we found was that the players who have dystonia were not moving their tongues nearly as dramatically as the elite group, and they weren't moving their jaws as dramatically. And it's hard to conclude, to be really definitive, because it's hard to know, well, did the dystonia cause their tongues to not move as much as they need to move? Or was their tongues not moving the way the elite group's tongues were moving? Did that cause the dystonia? Did that make them strain their facial muscles more over a long period of time, and did that contribute to the dystonia? So that's a big question. It's really hard to find a way to study that unless you did a longitudinal study and you followed horn players over like 30 years from the time they start playing the horn. And some of them might develop dystonia, and some of them become great horn players and have sustained careers, and then look at the differences. But yeah, there were dramatic differences with the dystonic people. And I guess, so we can't be definitive about that, but we can take the elite data and just say, well, this looks like a really advantageous way to play the horn. And of course, I've had a lot of students come to me, and it's very clear to me without getting them in an MRI chamber that they're not moving their tongues. to get into the high register, that they really have a difficult time getting into the high register, even to get like above an F at the top of the staff. And to gradually train them to say E or to do the finger breathing and to have them whistle in the high register and mimic what their tongue is doing, it seems to really help them develop a high register and put much, much less strain on their facial muscles. So I guess that's called an anecdotal way of looking at things, not a scientific way. But I have a feeling that there are a lot of horn students and maybe professional horn players out there who don't use their tongues the way this elite group are using, and that they might be at risk for being injured anyway. I don't know about dystonia, but having some kind of injury.
Are those films of the Histonic players available?
I don't know if they're available.
I know I saw Peter showed them at PAMA
Yeah.
in New York, but maybe we can check it out.
Right. Well, you can definitely talk to Peter about it and see if we can make them available, because you know they're interesting to look at.
They are very interesting.
Because they're very different strategy.
All right, next question. Oh, I have to go over here. Let's see.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. All right. Make sure we get everything. Oh my gosh, there's a lot.
lots of questions. Great.
All right, so somebody, Kaylee, said she'd be interested in looking at embouchures of different brass instruments and comparing similarities and differences. Say the horn versus the trombone versus the tuba versus the trumpet. Did they have a non-metallic trumpet for that trumpet player they did, or?
Yeah. They have a non-metallic trumpet. They also have a non-metallic trombone. So they're starting to do this study with trombonists and trumpet players, and it seems like there's a lot of similarities with trombone. There's actually a higher incidence of dystonia among trombone players, strangely. So they're really looking into that. Embouchures, I'm not sure. You know, the different brass instruments do sort of have their hallmarks of different embouchures, but I'm not sure what the question is, because we're not really talking about you know, the formation of the lips and the facial muscles on the mouthpiece with these studies.
Kaylee, if you have more, you can send us a note.
Sure.
Is Peter leading that research into those other instruments? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Next, Amy. I have experienced while playing horn in the low range an issue where there seems to be a problem, as I've interpreted it, with the tongue's position almost not being in a correlated position to the space in the oral cavity. There's sort of a bump before the note sort of settles in. Have you experimented with how someone like Sarah Willis tongues in the low range and demands on tonguing in the different ranges?
Yes. So one of the things I think we're going to look at with the second round of MRI is looking more into articulation. One of the pages in my book and one of the slides that we were looking at, I'm sort of a big proponent on what the front and middle of the tongue is doing to help us start notes in the low register, middle register, upper middle register, and high register. And generally, the lower notes, here I can find that page maybe.
Okay, and I'm gonna show the book. That's what we were saying before. Our picture was not up there. So this is the book we're talking about.
Right.
Horn playing from the inside out.
And here's the page, and you probably can't see it that clearly, but this is me tonguing a low B flat, and my jaw is down a little bit, and the jaw position really helps a lot with starting notes in the low register. Like you saw, Jeff Nelson had his jaw come out. So the jaw is moving from your temporomandibular joints, which are in front of your ears. So if everybody out there in TV land can put your fingers in your ears and then just gently move them about 1/2 inch and just feel where that hinge of the jaw is. It's important to know where that moves from, and that you can move your jaw up and down and forward and back and all over the place really from there. For low notes, for like starting a low B flat on the horn, I think of what a bulldog looks like. Kind of has this undershot jaw, sort of a monkey and a bulldog, and in my book there are adorable pictures of both. But I tell my students bulldog, and then tongue with the, and I say the rather than ta or jaw, because when we do a th sound, which is difficult in some languages don't have that sound, but if you sort of scrape your tongue in between your teeth, the, like that, the front of the tongue is low enough so that there's more space above the tongue and the air can slow down for a low note. I'm not sure about Sarah Willis, how she tongues, but I have a feeling it's similar.
But you guys will be looking more into
We'll be
that
looking into
coming
that,
over the next
yeah.
couple months. Great. Melanie says she was captivated by the front and side views that captured Sarah Willis's full torso as it showed real-time spine as well as rib movement. Is that clip available publicly? I would love to see that movement from the top of the spine to the tip of the spine as the horn is being played.
Yes, it is available publicly. So at the beginning, Vanessa said that I have several YouTube videos. So Peter Iltis and I put out something, there's like an MRI horn channel. And if you Google that MRI horn or my name or Peter's name, it'll probably come up. And it's on, I believe it's on episode 1, which was about sort of introducing the whole thing. And Peter talks about breathing, and we have Sarah Willis's the videos that you just saw.
And I will put out an email following this with these links in. Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of videos available online. The YouTubes that Peter and I put out, we put out because we wanted to have a real interpretation of what was going on and explanation of how you can teach this. I guess my fear was that there was a lot of these MRI videos are just out there and students are looking at them, and you know, I think it's good to look at them and maybe try to mimic them a little bit, to have an actual method of teaching them and learning how to move your tongue in the ways that those elite players are moving their tongue would be much more beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Next question. I was taught by a teacher who emphasized airspeed a lot, though she never clarified how to change airspeed. We talked about taking in faster air during the breath for the higher register. I was wondering if the change in register is simply due to the change in oral cavity, or if the method of air intake is also important at all. Could I use the same intake of air for multiple registers and simply change the oral cavity, or is the intake different? When you breathe in, do you breathe into the vowel of your first note, or do you breathe in on a neutral syllable? We just talked about that. And, you know, I can just give you my opinion, and Vanessa can give you her opinion. I breathe, start with the last question, I breathe on a neutral vowel. You know, I think of what Keith Underwood was saying about the he of Heather, and just kind of breathe quietly like that, because I feel like, you know, if I breathe with like an E syllable, it would be hard to take in as much air, like, and would make it a lot of noise. But I think Vanessa had a different experience. I had a different experience. So I've done a lot of experimenting with vowels and vowel shapes. I've used singing to learn about the movements. And I do find there are times where it's really helpful to do the inhalation on the vowel shape that you're going to play. So if you're going to play an ah, you're going to inhale with the ah, and then start ta. So one of the things that I really love that I learned from you is combining the articulation syllable with the vowel shape, putting them together. And so, yes, I've used inhalation with a vowel syllable.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is do what works. Do what works the best. You know, it's all empirical, and if it works for you to breathe in with a vowel, that's great. You know, I've never heard anyone talk about air intake speed and register. That's just not something I've heard about, except that it really is important to take in a very full breath without a lot of tension. There's like an Arnold Jacobs exercise that he calls the sippy breath, I think, where you take in a full breath and then you sip, 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 and you kind of top off the breath. And when you can try this at home. And what's really good about it for me is, and my students, is it makes the air just zoom out of your body. You know, when the lungs are really full and the diaphragm is, you know, sort of fully flattened, or as flattened as it will be, then it wants to get the air out of the lungs quickly. So that's a good trick. What other parts did I miss? So yeah, I would say the change in oral cavity is really the thing to look for and to try to work with when you're playing the different registers. I think that's really where it's at. I think it's much more with that than with how you take in the air.
All right, Amy, I tend to be a very left-brained, analytical type of person, and I can foresee that this kind of information might cause me to overthink things. How do you teach these concepts to students like this?
That's a great question, and a really important question, because there is that analysis equals paralysis, or can lead to paralysis, and we certainly don't want paralysis. And you know, I come across a lot of left brain people, and it's important not to stay there in the left brain, and really the best way, I think, to get people much more intuitive and kinesthetically oriented is to do the finger breathing or the whistling part of it. Because, you know, if you have a student who can whistle the nocturne, like, there's nothing left brain about that. And then when you just say, okay, do you feel your tongue moving? Well, do those same movements, just transfer those movements over when you play the horn. You know, there's nothing left brain about that. And that's what I think is really brilliant about Keith Underwood's method of finger breathing, is it does take you out of thinking a lot. So finger breathing can work for a lot of people. There's some people who really have a hard time with it and who can't whistle. I've sort of done my informer survey of the entire world, and I think half the world can whistle well and half the world cannot whistle that well. And usually people can do the making the sound over their finger, even if they can't whistle. But if they're not that good at that, then the vowels really do come in handy. And just to remind somebody to use he or t for a high note, that's not too analytical. That's just, okay, this can really help you. I guess my bottom line as a teacher is I'm not a cookie cutter teacher. I really try to tailor my teaching to individuals' learning styles and what they respond to. And but I will use every trick in the book to get somebody to be moving their tongue well. When you're changing something, as Barbara Conable pointed out, I read this wonderful article on your website about that she talked about sort of dealing with dystonia. I don't know the exact title, but it was a really wise article. And what she was saying was that any kind of habit changing takes a long time and has to be done really slowly over time. So, all these ideas take a long time to take hold. You can try them out and they'll probably work for you really well. But if you don't practice them sort of to get them in your muscle memory, your sort of automatized muscle memory, then they'll go away and you'll go back to your old habits. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So with my students, it really takes weeks and months and sometimes a couple of years to get their tongues and jaw to move in this very very fluid, very natural kind of way that you use when you whistle. So it takes a long time. It's not, it's more of a doing it and wanting to get better on your instrument like every single day over a long period of time. After a while, people stop thinking about it, just like my son stopped thinking about tying his shoes. Like when he was 4, he wanted to tie his shoes in the worst way. It took him about 10 minutes per shoe. And per shoe. So we're very, very patient parents. And but does it take him 10 minutes now that he's 30? No, he doesn't even think about it. It takes him probably 5 seconds and doesn't even know he's tying his shoes. And so that's what myelin insulation can do in the brain. And that's, gradually all these vowels or the finger breathing and the tongue movements and jaw movements get automatized. And we don't have to think about it that much at all. I hardly think about it. And I only think about it when I have to brush something up or I make a mistake and I have to go over something. It's like, oh yeah. And I'll write in he in my part for a high note or off or a low note.
And I love what you say about practicing away from the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get those instruments and we go to our habits.
Yeah.
So that's in my class, that's one of the things we're doing all the time, practicing away from our instrument.
Yeah, it's great to do finger breathing and to do singing because horn players generally just have it on their face all the time, and that's how you can get injured. It's so great to take it off your face and do something that's extremely useful, extremely beneficial for your playing that doesn't involve this physical on the face thing.
Yep. Awesome. All right, we are at 9:30.
Okay.
We have a couple more questions. Do you want to go through the questions? Do you want to?
How about one more question?
All right, Kelly. How can one compensate for gravity? Lying flat in an MRI tube is different than standing or sitting upright. As far as I know, you have to be flat on your back and not moving in order for the MRI machine to do its thing. Wouldn't the oral cavity be collapsed? Not the right word, but towards the spine.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a physiologist. We were flat on our backs. I don't know if there are any vertical MRI machines, but maybe the mouth changes shape a little bit when you're flat on your back, but it probably doesn't change that much. That's just sort of my common sense response to that. And again, it's not a perfect experiment, but I think what's really important about the experiments is that we found these patterns. We found these patterns among the elite group, and whether their tongues would look a little bit different if we were standing up straight and playing that way. They might, but probably not a whole lot is my sense.
So you didn't perceive any difference?
Well, of course, it's different playing an instrument when you're flat on your back. You might try it, but it's possible to play an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just kind of working with what we had and trying to do the best we could and get data that we thought was legitimate, really.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think we have to call it a night here, everybody. I know there's 8 more messages.
Whoa.
Maybe we can capture those and write a response to them.
I could probably do that when I have the time.
When
Yeah.
we have some
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for tuning in. This has been exciting. I want to thank Eli for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. It was really fun.
And I want to thank Gray, our technical advisor.
Thank you, Gray, for waiting by patiently, but just in case.
He's been sitting here gathering information from us. But this has been a great evening. Thank you so much, Eli, and thank you all for coming. Don't forget to come to the conference in June, and we will capture those questions and get them answered at some point. But I will send out an email with some links for some videos and Eli's website. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night. Great meeting you.
How do I stop it?
So, yes, just press X, but let's actually just mute for a second just so we don't lose the chat.
Okay.
Let's mute and stop video.